Around the year 844 AD, a Viking raiding party gathered below the Gaelic Hillfort of Dunamase in preparation for a raid. Trokra!
Brenda!
During the raid, the Vikings ended up kidnapping the Bishop of Glass and bringing him away to the province of Munster, where they actually killed him. Unfortunately, this is not the last time that violence will be associated with the name of Dunamase, or Dunamase as the fortress on top of the rock will end up being known. Neil! Hello, hi, and welcome to our special episode of Camping with Idiots. In this first of a three-part special of Big Al's Out of Time, we are going to start talking about the Castle of Dunamase. It's a very interesting castle in Portlaoise, and it has a fascinating history going all the way back in time towards Ptolemy. So in this first part of the series, we are going to look at the early medieval history of it, and for investigating it, I've got a very special guest star with me today.
Oh, I had some job, I tell you, milking them goats.
Oh, well, fresh. So, are you delighted to be going to the Rock of Dunamase?
I'm absolutely delighted. We're out.
Yes, we are out.
We're out.
The COVID lockdown is finally finished and we are free to basically raid and pillage and do what Camping with Idiots does. So as saying this first episode, we are going to be talking about there was an early medieval history where we're like basically going to go to the castle itself, and we're going to show you the remains of the original Celtic Dun, which most people walk past and don't even know exists. And then in our second episode, we are going to be talking more about the whole Norman history of it and sort of the controversies of the Normans coming into Ireland and that. And then in the third episode, we'll be talking about the Irish taking it back for themselves, and then Cromwell coming along and supposedly blowing it up. And so we'll be investigating that in the third part. So hopefully you'll enjoy what you see, and I hope you enjoyed this very first episode.
Cheers.
Cheers. Okay, we're just on the N80 here, and we're just driving up to the Rock of Dunamase now. It is located on the N80 just outside Portlaoise, and there is two roads into it. They're both well signposted, and as you can see, there's the Rock of Dunamase up above us. It's on a limestone escarpment, as it's called. It's basically a big hill. Originally, what we're going to be looking at today is the original Gaelic Dun, which was a circular structure made of stone. It had two walls, an inside and an outside wall, and they were defensive structures, but again, what you're seeing now up on top of the rock is the Norman defensive structure, which is much more defensible, for lack of a better word. And we hopefully over the next few episodes we will talk you through all of that. So I'm saying the Rock of Dunamase is open all year round, and it's open to the public. There is no paying for it into it. It is an OPW site, and as a heritage site it has to be respected. So if you ever bring any rubbish, make sure to bring it and bring it away with you as well. Make sure to always keep all gates closed. As you can see, the parking here isn't the best, but what we'll do is we'll try and see if we can get a little spot to park into. actually turn around. So it's located beside a Church of Ireland churchyard as well, which is right beside us here, as you can see. Let's reverse around. Some days when you come here it can be very busy. If you come in the evening time it's a little bit better. There might be a lot of dog walkers or that, but you kind of have the site to yourself. But obviously with a lot of people off on holidays and that at the moment, there is quite a lot of people visiting it. As well, since COVID, everyone wants to get out and get some exercise, so that's another reason that there's a lot of people here. Now, so we'll get out and we'll start exploring. So here we are. As you can see, there's the Rock of Dunamase with the big castle up in front of us. So it's a fantastic site to visit. And there's the churchyard there beside us. I believe that's from the 1800s. Worst thing about the site here is there is no wheelchair access, which is really bad, and it would be so easy to put in wheelchair access. So if you are coming, again, be prepared for a bit of walking, and if you're not that nimble, maybe bring some walking sticks or that, because as you can see it is a bit
All uphill, baby.
It is all uphill, yes. So there's the OPW have good signage in here, and as you can see where we are out here now, where there would have been a bit of a village, this is what's called the Outer Barbican, which would have been timber palisades and that from the Norman era. And then we're going to walk in here, and we're actually going to sit here today and talk about the original Celtic Dun, because that's where the original wall is. So most of this is Norman. These are actually the defensive ditches that they built outside the castle. And we're coming up to the Barbican gate, which I absolutely love, and is in good condition. And if you're into views, you've got to get some views of the area, because it's absolutely fantastic.
Oh, it's fantastic views, isn't it?
Yeah, really nice. As you can see, this time of summer, plenty of foliage as well. So,
we got a lovely day for it.
very good. Now, so we're actually going to, for this episode, we're going to bypass all this area and go right up to the older structures. I know you're like, but we want to see the new stuff. Don't worry, we'll do that in the next episode.
So we're basically working inside out.
Yes, that's exactly what we're doing. So, this is the Norman gatehouse. So, we're on the outside of the Norman curtain wall, and this is actually where the Gaelic Celtic Dun is. This is what Dermot MacMurrough would have inherited from his ancestors. This is the fort that was actually attacked by the Vikings in the 9th century. This is archeologically, there is no evidence of there being structures or a presence on the Rock of Dunamase before that, before this fort came in. The only thing is because of the area that it's in, because of its being high up. I mean, obviously in prehistory people would have went there. As we were saying earlier, the first mention of what most people believe is the first mention of Dunamase is Ptolemy's map. Ptolemy was an Egyptian Roman in the 2nd century AD. He actually made maps of Europe, and he made maps of, was it Ireland or Hibernia, as they would have called it. Basically, he got most of his information of travelling sailors and that, and Ireland's interesting because the map of Ireland, anywhere, most areas that have names of it is all on the actual coast, but there's a few names inland, and one of them is Dunam, and it is on the map around this area here. So we have a fort called Dunam in this area more than likely was Dunamase, so it might have been a sacred site, yeah, so Ptolemy actually mentioned it. The area digitor istimo Dunam. And then, was in archaeology, we found no evidence yet of an occupation period that early back. But then in the early medieval period, possibly around the actual 6th century or that, then you have this dune being built. So it's how we know it's an Irish Gaelic dune is that it is what's called cyclopean masonry, these big rocks, compared to the smaller rocks, the ashlar masonry that the Normans was using, which is basically just cut rocks. These big rocks, and the rocks are just put together with no concrete at all. This is called dry stone walling. Basically, the Irish use these for thousands of years. If you ever visit Bruna Banya and visit Newgrange, when you go inside or that, the actual corbelled roof in there is dry stone walling, and you wouldn't even get a piece of grass in between it because they were so good at stacking rocks together. So this is the original fort. This is the fort that the Vikings actually attacked against and went in and kidnapped the poor Bishop of Terryglass, and then they brought him away and martyred him. So, who exactly were the Vikings? I thought I'd take a very quick second out to explain a bit about the Vikings here, or as archaeologists like to call them, the Norse. The Norse came from generally Scandinavian countries, Norway, Denmark and Sweden, and a lot of the raiders that came to Ireland were actually Norwegian originally. The first started in the annals in actually England in 793, they raided a monastery there, and then very soon they are recorded attacking Irish monasteries in 795. They are recorded attacking Rathlin Island, and it kind of goes on from there. They sort of started off the first 50 years that literally raids. Basically, the Vikings as a people never existed. The Norse people, or the Norse culture, had within them a part of this society who were basically sea pirates, kind of young people who hadn't much land, wanted to make money. So what they did was basically a big chieftain got together all these young lads and possibly sometimes ladies, got them all onto a ship and went raiding. And then they started realizing monasteries, and especially the Frankish Empire, the Anglo-Saxons and the Celtic Irish had lots and lots of money. So half the time they actually traded with people, and then the other time they actually raided. So when a baron got all of these people together and went, what they called it was they were going a Viking, which is basically raiding and pillaging. It was part of the society. And then when they made their wealth, they actually used to go home and become farmers. So they were basically married to the soil and married to the sea as well. The actual Vikings were very, very home-centered people. Which kind of sounds strange for people. Normally you kind of see them as psychotic, deranged berserkers, and the berserker was actually meant to be a type of a Viking. They believe some Viking warriors might have taken drugs and just went crazy on the actual battlefield. But the Vikings were very efficient. They had amazingly good boats. So when they actually came to us in Ireland, these boats with a very low draft in them allowed them to go up the rivers and that, and also to attack lots of monasteries in that inland. So as you've seen in the original reenactment in the year about 843, 844, they actually raided Dunamase. So possibly where the Vikings that raided Dunamase came from is beside the Kildare town of Athy, which is near Dunamase. There's a place called Dun Rally, which is Rollo's fort. Now Rollo is actually a Viking name, and the annals tell of a Viking long fort that actually had been there and had been burnt by the Irish, and the Vikings had left. But at that time the fort would have been there. So it's possible that the Vikings came up the Barrow, had an actual encampment at Dunrally, and then crossed the land and attacked Dunamase. So again, as you've seen in the reenactment, they would have had Viking swords. I also did a sword special, so I'm not going to go into too much detail again. As you can see, they had leather scabbards. Now, swords weren't that common in Viking culture at all, even though in all the films it shows people with swords. But the Vikings were basically spears, axes, bows and arrows. In fact, the Vikings introduced the battle axe into us in Ireland. Before the Vikings, we actually didn't use battle axes, but after the Vikings coming in, it became very much an Irish thing, and the Irish used battle axes an awful lot of the time. Again, as I was showing before in the sword special, this is a sax. The Vikings and the Anglo-Saxons that use them, it's just basically a long fighting knife, and again with a leather scabbard. So the Vikings had these. They also had round shields. When they came into Ireland and they kind of basically settled at different points and ports, they started to incorporate Irish culture into them. So like a lot of Norse artifacts that we actually find are called Hiberno-Norse. So for example, shield bosses, which is the metal part of the shield, in Dublin they are totally different than any other Viking shield bosses you will see anywhere else. Also the helmets, as you can see, this is what's called a nasal spangle hem. So the spangle hem just means that it's got these metal strips across. So in Viking times, you could have had, say, these bands, but instead of having metal plates, they might have had timber or actual leather. Again, Viking helmets aren't found that common at all. A lot of times people think they might have literally just worn leather helmets. What I'm wearing here is what's called an arming cap, which maybe some very poor Vikings would have just worn this. They also wore protective caps or kind of padding like this called a gambeson, which they actually wore under their body. They also the actual rich Vikings had mail, which was generally a kind of a half shirt. So like they had a half shirt of mail here, and as they progressed on, some Vikings would have had what's called this aventail, which actually goes down around the back and protects your neck. But again, the ordinary Viking warrior would have been maybe an axe, a spear, a shield, possibly a padded gambeson and padded hat with like maybe a leather helmet or that. But they were very good at working together, because on the Viking boats you could have up to 60 or 100 warriors on one of their longships, and the longships had to travel for like hundreds and in some cases thousands of miles. The Vikings made it as far as Constantinople in Byzantium. They actually founded Russia. That's where the actual word Russia comes from. The Rus is Vikings from Sweden, and they also made it as far as Newfoundland, because they actually found a Viking encampment there in Laois and Edos. So the Vikings got all around. So when the Vikings came to Ireland, they were originally raiders, and then around the 840s, which is about the time the Dunamase was attacked, something strange happened. The actual annals at the time started saying the Vikings were starting to overwinter. Before that, the Vikings would just come, attack, take everything and go. But then they decided, if we stay over winter, then we can actually, instead of going all the way back to Scandinavia, we can stay here, keep encamped, and then start raiding earlier the next summer. So that's where Dublin and like Waterford, Wexford, Limerick, Cork, all these cities started coming from. They were like originally Viking long forts. Basically, a long fort was, say, like a mile or two long stretch along an actual river or that, and the Vikings fenced it off. Sometimes they used existing sites like monasteries and that. They would fence it off, and they would use it to bring their ships in, haul the ships up and do ship repair. So the actual Viking site at Woodstown in Waterford, they found loads and loads of nails and rivets and that, which the Vikings was actually using to repair their ships. So basically the Vikings started staying And then in Ireland, when you kind of start getting into the later end of the actual 9th century, now archaeologists call them Hiberno-Norse because they started, basically intermarrying with the Celts. They still had a Scandinavian origin and the kind of a Scandinavian style to themselves, but they actually did intermarry in with the local Celtic people in Ireland, and that basically made a slightly different culture in some ways. So they were separate from the Irish, but also in some ways slightly separate from the actual Vikings. And basically these, as they went on, became more and more powerful because before the Vikings came, Ireland had no established towns. We basically lived in very small settlements of like basically maybe say parents, cousins, grandparents in a rat or Hillfort. But then when the Vikings came, they actually established proper towns. So when these towns, they were obviously trading with like all across Europe and that, and Dublin was famous for being an actual slave market, which is an unfortunate piece of history, but it also made them extremely wealthy. So because of that, then the Irish politically kind of wanted to get involved with the Vikings and take over, and then you had lots of battles and the Battle of Clontarf and that, and maybe eventually we will visit some more of those areas and talk about them. But I just kind of wanted to give you an idea that the Vikings at the time of 840 were starting to think about settling down, but they actually were still pagan. So one of the reasons taking away the Bishop of Terryglass and martyring him might have been to basically say to the Christians, we're pagan, we don't care. The other reason why they probably took him originally was to actually ransom him. And maybe because the annals show very little information, there might be more to the story, and possibly maybe they took him to ransom him. Maybe he said no one will pay for me, and then they just decided to kill him. But basically on that raid, they also raided other places too and killed lots of other monks and that too. But again, the Irish also raided monasteries sometimes too, so it wasn't an uncommon thing for monks to die, unfortunately. But yeah, so basically the actual Vikings then as I was saying, they actually didn't go away. They sort of got subsumed into Irish culture, and then the Normans came along. And then the Normans basically kicked the Vikings out of their towns. They still kept them as traders and that, but then the Normans took over, and the Vikings just kind of disappeared into the Irish population. So there actually has been DNA studies in that to show that there is quite a bit of Viking DNA within us. I still think it's a great place of study to see how much influence the Vikings actually had with the Irish. So I hope this brief discussion of the Vikings give you a better idea who the Vikings were and why they were actually attacking the Rock of Dunamase. Now back to the tour. I hope you enjoy it. And then you can see there's a bit more of a wall here. There's also this second area just up above us. It's like a second inner wall. That's also part of the original dune. But then when the Normans came along, they built on top. So you've heard me mention before Dermot MacMurrough. Basically, Dermot MacMurrough was the king of Leinster. In around the year 1152, he kidnapped a rival's queen, Dervla. Depending on which annals you read, some annals says she went with him willingly, others said that he basically kidnapped her, but that basically started off a feud between them. So about 15 years later, Dermot MacMurrough got deposed and left Leinster in 1166. He went originally to England and then to France to go to Henry II to ask for was it help to basically get back his actual kingdom. So Henry II says, go ask my men. You can, if you go to Wales, you know, maybe some guys there can actually help you. So that's what he did. He goes to Wales. He goes to Earl Richard Fitzgilbert de Clare, Strongbow, asks him for help. Strongbow gives him permission, and then he goes and gets a few Norman knights to come over with him, and they land on Banno Beach. So, and then the deal that basically Dermot McMurray made with Richard Fitzgibbon de Clare was that he'd be allowed to marry his daughter, and he would get the actual lands when Dermot McMurray died. Unfortunately, he died very quickly, and Strongbow got the lands very quickly. So it is interesting to think. I wonder what would happen if Dermot hadn't died so quickly. Would he have allowed Strongbow to basically take all his land? I always think it was a very weird deal. It's a kind of like, if you help me get my land back, you can have it all when I die. And to make a deal like that to a Norman, I mean, Normans have big swords, is a kind of bit unusual. Even though there is no evidence that Dermot was murdered, and I don't think he was. I think he just died of kind of illness. But it is such a weird deal to make, in my opinion. But anyway, so then after that, the Normans started taking over. So now we're going to look about a bit more. Oh, yeah, that was. I have a thirst on me like Odin. Pass to me, please. Well, okay. Well, I hoped ye enjoyed that first visit to us at Dunamase.
Make sure you like us.
And subscribe. And if you want to see any more lots of old rocks, tune in for part 2, because it's going to be all about the Normans. Okay, we'll see you in the next episode.